The ending of fear. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall like it owed him answers. The air in the room felt heavier than it should, as if the silence had gained weight overnight. He didn't move, not because he was calm, but because he was trapped. Not physically, but in that way you can be when nothing is happening and yet you can't breathe. Fear wasn't the kind of thing he could point to. It wasn't a monster in the closet or a noise in the dark. It was in the pause before answering his phone. It was in the small familiar lie he told every time someone asked, "How are you?" It was in the way his chest tightened every time someone used the word potential around him. He thought fear was supposed to feel bigger, like panic or sweat or running for your life. But it wasn't. It was small, almost invisible. The quiet tension behind every choice he didn't make, every chance he let slip away. For years, he had called it something else. Caution, responsibility, being smart. But tonight, with no distractions left, it was clear for the first time what it really was. Fear wasn't protecting him. It wasn't saving him from anything real. It was a leash, short and tight, that let him move just enough to convince himself he was free. He rubbed his hands together, trying to feel something solid, but all he felt was the familiar ache of wanting more without ever reaching for it. That was the thing about fear. It wasn't loud. It was patient. It didn't need to fight him. It just waited for him to convince himself he couldn't. He leaned forward, his head in his hands, and for the first time, he didn't try to push the feeling away. He didn't distract himself, didn't make an excuse. He just let it sit there, cold and heavy and true. Fear wasn't something outside of him. It wasn't something he could run from or defeat. It was a shadow cast by his own mind, always growing longer every time he turned his back on it. And that's when it happened. Not a revelation, not a breakthrough, but a thought so plain and obvious, it felt almost stupid. What if it's not real? Not real. Not in the way he'd always believed. Not a force. Not a truth, but a suggestion. A story his mind had whispered for so long that he'd started confusing it with reality. He looked up, the wall still blank and unhelpful. The air didn't feel lighter. His chest still ached, but the weight wasn't quite the same. just enough for him to realize that the walls he felt closing in had been nothing more than shadows. And shadows can't hold you if you stop mistaking them for walls. This has been